So you'll remember from episode 1 that we encountered 172 individuals on our day at Crooked Lake here recently. Of those 172, 145 of those were siliquoidea. We had a couple dozen subrostrata and just 4 Pyganodon grandis. Of that 145 siliquoidea, 42 of those had been previously tagged, and we recaptured them, and 3 of the subrostrata had been previously tagged. We didn't find any Pyganodon grandis with tags on them. Also in episode 1, we looked at the size distribution of siliquoidea. And the average size was 49.7. Now here's siliquoidea again, with an average of 49.7 cubic centimeters and error bars of 1 standard deviation above and below. Now we found about 2 dozen subrostrata, and they were smaller on average than the siliquoidea, just south of 30 cubic centimeters. Subrostrata didn't vary as much in size as siliquoidea. The 4 Pyganodon grandis did vary quite a bit as well, and they were quite a bit larger than either of the other 2 species. Now, you might recall that we had a person out there with a stick with a tape measure on it and a little round plastic disc measuring water depths. Sometimes they were with one team, I think sometimes they were with the other, just doing the best they could. And I really need to get another stick, another stick made. Anyway, we only have data here for some of our siliquoidea. So we had 144 in total. We only have depth data for 83 of those. Of our 24 subrostrata, we only had 17 data points for that species, and lucky us, we actually measured all 4 Pyganodon grandis depths. Anyway, what we can say about these data is we're running around 18 inches or so on average, a little more, which is what we all know is that we're finding these guys in water that to most of us is waist deep or less. At this stage in the game, haphazard and incomplete as these data are, would be premature, I think, to throw a lot of statistics at this and do a lot of hypothesis testing. There is enough of a trend, though, that gives me reason to equip the next Mussel Roundup group with another measuring stick so that we can get more complete data, and maybe we can actually find a difference between how deep we find siliquoidea, subrostrata, and grandis. Oh my gosh, there's a lot going on here. Red and green, looks like Christmas. So we'll walk through this here. We're looking at growth of tagged siliquoidea between the summer of 2021 and 2022, so for almost exactly a year. So each of these pairs is the same individual. So ID number 11965 we saw on the 26th of June last year, and we saw it during this year's roundup. And of course, the way I like to look at size, rather than just focusing on linear measurements like shell length and height and width, I take those together, as you saw in episode 1, and using a fancy formula, get the approximate volume occupied by that individual. So the ellipsoid volume is calculated from those 3 linear measures. And for example, when we look at just this top individual, a year ago, we had an ellipsoid volume of 80 right on the nose. Come along this year, same formula, little slightly different numbers. We had an ellipsoid volume of 81.4. And the difference between those, so 81.4 minus 80.0, is the change in size from one year to the next. So 1.4 cubic centimeter change in size. So out of the 144 siliquoidea that we encountered, 42 of those had been previously tagged. And out of those 42, these 10 were seen last summer. And when we look at the size change from one summer to the next, there's quite a few of these that are negative. In fact, about half of them. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of the 10 were negative. And when we find the mean, the average, we actually find that there was, as a group, a decrease in size of a little less than 1 cubic centimeter from one year to the next. Yeah, there was quite a bit of variation in that. Well, that's about it for this time. Thanks for watching, and I'll look forward to talking at you in the future.